Hello, my name is Heath Jones, and welcome to this episode of the Northwood Podcast. It's been over a week since our last episode because Christmas. I hope you had a good holiday week. However you kept it, we did at Northwood. If you were at our Christmas Eve service, you'll know that it brought us together to one another and also closer to an experience of God's love towards us and reflected out on the world. It was a very special time. But moving beyond that, I realized that Christmas, we must admit it, did not bring an end to the winter, obviously. But if you can let that sit as a metaphor, Christmas not bringing an end to the winter, it should be obvious to us all that we hope that Christ is coming into our realm will bring. Well, there is a lot of work left unfinished. There's still suffering in the world. The days are still short. I'm recording this on the week after Christmas. And, some of us felt on Christmas somehow that God was with us. And that was an amazing moment. Those were amazing moments when we sensed that we had all that we needed and had hope for the future. Maybe you had that experience. I did in part this year, as I often do around Christmas time. But in the days that follow, from where I sit now, and then on into January and then February, well, not a lot seems to have changed. Is God still with us? And is it possible to keep the hope Christmas gives going strong in the weeks and months to come? More on that in a moment. In the meantime, if you'd like to learn more about our church, where I pastor, Northwood Christian Church, please, I encourage you to check out our website. You can find that at www.indyncc.org. That's ndncc.org, where you can find our service times, where you can meet with us in person or stream by way of our live stream on YouTube and on our website, as well as other works that we're involved in, the food pantry and other endeavors. You can also find past live streams and other videos there as well. And I should also give a shout out at this moment to who makes all of this possible, at least the podcast component of this possible, All Indiana Podcast Network. The All Indiana Podcast Network produces a variety of podcasts ranging from a wide array of topics. Their common thread being that they're all produced right here in Indiana. And you can find out more or peruse the selection of podcasts that they have at allindianapodcastnetwork.com, or you can find them by simply typing in www.wishtv.com/podcast, as Wish TV is also a producer or produces with All Indiana Podcasts. I'm not sure how it works. Anyway, you can find them there. But moving on to our message for the day. In a moment, we'll do that. But first, we should pause for some ads for our podcast audience. If you've been watching on YouTube, you know that we have a podcast audience listening to this audibly. And so here are some ads. And we're back. Or maybe you never left. Either way, our Bible passage for consideration today is found in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2, verses 13 through 23. And it goes: Now, after they had left, they being the Magi, the three wise men, after they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night and went to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." When Herod saw that he had been tricked by the Magi, he was infuriated, and he sent and killed all the children in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had learned from the Magi. Then what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing in loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled because they were no more. When Herod died, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who were seeking the child's life are dead." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And after being warned in a dream, he went away to the district of Galilee. There, he made his home in a town called Nazareth, so that what had been spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene. I wrote this sermon, I prepared this message just days after Christmas. I'm recording this just days after Christmas. Already looking towards the new year with all the hope Christmas instilled in me. But I alluded to this in my preface to this whole episode. I must admit, the feelings of Christmas morning have already waned slightly, or maybe more than a little slightly, although I'm trying to keep the magic alive. For, you see, when I began to write this message just 2 days ago, I was woken up earlier than usual, because my eldest daughter got out of bed sick with some hopefully minor flu-type bug. In fact, update you, it seems like she is fine. But for a couple of days she was sick, and this happened right after Christmas and all that we had done with the Christmas Eve service and the service on Christmas morning. This pastor was tired, and so Christmas began to seem like a distant memory as I found myself crashing back to normal. Sick kids with the flu. You know what it's like to come back to normal. Or maybe your return to normal after Christmas was marked by your return to work after a holiday weekend. Here I am recording this sermon. I'm in that boat too. Or maybe the cold winter's wind and the still shortened days have reminded you that spring is still months away. Maybe you're one of those people who suffer depression during these long winter months. Again, sometimes I do too. There could be a variety of life circumstances that sobered your mind in the week after Christmas and brought you back to reality. And if this has happened to you, I commiserate and I relate. But what we must remember is that the Christmas season reminds us of the creative, life-giving potential that is always with us in every season, even during the week after Christmas. So this year, our yearly reminder that God is with us was Christmas, as it is every year. And because this is so, we discovered that there was more life that surrounds us than meets the eye, even during the long winter months. That's what we learned together as a community here at Northwood, at least most of us, I hope. Going back 2,000 years to one of our spiritual ancestors, Joseph, for him, his return to normal, well, it was more like a crash back into the hard life he had always known. At this point, his life had already been upended. His betrothed, Mary, she was pregnant, and it wasn't his kid. But no worry, says the angel, and he's told that this child will be a blessing to all people, including Joseph and his family, that the child would embody God's presence with the people. And then that child came. Jesus came, and that child was named Emmanuel, which means God with us, right? More evidence that this child is a blessing. Christmas has come. What could go wrong? Return to normal. Well, for Joseph, his normal would be his discovery that despite the arrival of this Christ child, much could still go wrong. In a dream, a few years after Jesus was born, Joseph is warned of the pending danger, and that, because Herod is out after him, the king is out after to kill his child, and he's told to uproot his family and to travel to Egypt. And this is another call, like we find in the Bible, out into the unknown, where the hero of faith goes out into the unknown in faith. Abraham, one maybe thinks of Moses, also called to Egypt. Either way, they're called from their home to a strange land. And so Joseph, Mary, and Jesus would join in that tradition and spend a couple of years in exile, as foreigners, in fact, in a strange land. Refugees. That's what they were. And I'm so glad that they were able to find what they needed as refugees in Egypt, even in that strange land. Never forget this as we try to accommodate refugees from around the globe, that Jesus and his family were once refugees. But I digress. Either way, Herod does what Herod does. You can read about it in Matthew chapter 2. And historians will note how Herod's massacre of children under 2, or the massacre of the innocents, as it's more popularly called, is only reported in Matthew's gospel and in no other historical sources. So we cannot cross-check it with other contemporary sources. But what I can say is that its historicity aside, the slaughter of all the male children under 2 around Bethlehem, the story does fit the character and the mold of Herod. It fits what else we know about him from other sources, about other cruelties that he committed, having killed multiple members of his own family, having them assassinated, things like that. Bad guy. Whatever the case, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus in our story in Matthew chapter 2 weighed out the violence that was occurring in their homeland in presumptive safety in Egypt. Many years. So we read about it quickly in just a few short moments, but just imagine years living in a place that is not your home. Maybe the language is different, the customs, the culture, everything. That's the way they waited it out until Herod's death, an estimated 3 years later. It's a long time to exist in a space like that. Not to beat a dead horse, but apart from one's home, uprooted, transient, and with little idea of how long. How long, God, do I have to live like this? Probably crossed Joseph's mind, Mary's mind more than once. But then an angel returns to report that, ta-da, it's safe to return home. Hooray, all is well. Except we read in the text that although Herod is dead, his son, a new local governing official, is also dangerous. So Joseph has to pivot yet again, and according to this account, he moves his family to Nazareth, where they can hopefully resume their lives in presumptive safety, but who knows? And as you know, and as Joseph had learned by Jesus' third year, the world is unpredictable, and our futures seem to always remain uncertain. But just as angels would interrupt Joseph's life with messages of hope against fear, Joseph and his family would continue to find reasons to trust in God despite it all. The spirit of Christmas, or what we experienced Christmas Eve, or what I hope you experienced this season, those feelings, hope, joy, peace, love, found them again and again. And I don't know how it was for you, but for me, do you remember, if you were with us, how it came for us this year? Here at Northwood, we were smack in the middle of a long winter month after a couple of long, bleak years, just like the rest of you. And then once again, our lives were disrupted, but in a good way. Christmas came amidst the din and the confusion and the fear. At least it did for me and many others, and we sang festive songs together. We dressed our children up for skits and invited their grandparents to smile at all the mess that can be observed in a children's play. And for many, it was as if joy materialized from the gloom. If you could picture Joseph tucked away in Egypt, it would be like finding joy in the midst of the fear. And for us, that's what it was like. And in those moments, we joined with the likes of Joseph and Mary, and we cultivated, like them, pockets of light in the face of darkness. A family gathering, that's a pocket of light. Maybe that's what you experienced around this time of year. But our Christmas Eve celebration, that was a haven of light, joy, and a wild expression of hope. And the question for us going forward, I said that night, and will continue to be, how much more joy will materialize between this moment while I'm recording this and next year? Again, I remind you where I began. 2 days after Christmas was when I began to type this, with a child sick on the couch. So personally, I found myself smack dab back in the middle of the doldrums after Christmas. That's what it was like for me. There's my exile in Egypt. Where's the joy? Where's the peace? Now, I'm being facetious because, of course, there are many others in the world who have it far worse than me. Just a dad with a child sick with the flu, tired after Christmas. People across the globe have it far, far worse. And realistically, most people in the world have it worse than me. Realistically, most people in history have had it worse than me. So, I shouldn't get too hard, feeling too sorry for myself. In fact, my lot is not so bad. And especially when we consider Joseph's plight, again, running from Egypt, fleeing a homicidal king, then the return home, only to discover that even home is not yet safe. So yeah, I'd say that compared to Joseph and his family, they had it worse than me. Yet, Joseph was told, in the midst of worse than me, by heavenly messengers, not to fear. He was told that he needn't fear because God was still with him. In Bethlehem, in Egypt, in Nazareth, makes no difference. God would still be with him. So, finding joy in some modicum of peace should not be impossible, was not for Joseph, and not for me, not for you. And as I've come to realize, things are not nearly so dire for me. And with this reminder, I can begin to feel the magic of Christmas again. I can begin to notice what there is to be thankful and joyful for and about around me right here, right now, just days removed from Christmas. And I think it will be true in March and July besides. I can remember throughout the year that this year's Christmas found me in the wake of other children's flus and quite literally in the wake of a deep, frigid winter freeze, yet it still found us. We were visited by God's peace and profound moments. And these moments found us, and they will again. Just as God came near to us to dwell with us in the person of Jesus, God has drawn near to me as I write this, as I record this. God is still with me, was always with me when I didn't know it, was with me way back when and is still with me now. In fact, I'm beginning to suspect that God never leaves us, that God is always with us. God was always with Joseph, Mary, and Jesus. And what was true for Joseph and his family is still true today. God is with us. What was true on Christmas morning, the first Christmas, in fact, and everyone since then, what we felt, the hope, the love, still true for us here in this moment. The days will continue to lengthen, but even while they are short, God's peace will find us one way or another. I believe this because I was told on Christmas that a child was born who was called Emmanuel, which means God with us. And as I keep saying, what was true then is true now. God is with me. And God will remain with us through these long winter nights and longer summer days. Thank God. God is always with us. Our journey of faith going forward will be for us to keep this in mind, to never forget it until next Christmas and every other day besides that God is ever with us, that despite it all and everything evil, God is still with us. God is ever with us, and this will never change. Let that sink in. So I'll repeat the angel's words that were spoken to Joseph at the outset of his journey for you to hear and for me to remember. He was told before Jesus came, before the escape to Egypt, and then back home, that he shouldn't be afraid. Do not be afraid, said the angel in the opening salvo, just to put Joseph at his ease in the midst of a tough situation. Do not be afraid, because God would be with him through it all. We, you, and me, need not be afraid, because God has been and still is with us and will continue to be with us through whatever comes next, be with the human race. In the meantime, the days will lengthen. Spring is on the way. The weather will one day warm and life will grow up wild around us. And whether you take that literally or the metaphor, the joy finds us one way or another. God is with us. Seasons come and seasons go, but God is still with us and will continue to be with us through it all. This has been the Northwood Podcast. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to the podcast by way of whatever app you use to listen, or leave a comment. These points of engagement drive more traffic our way. Or check out our website, www.indyncc.org. And also check out the other podcasts produced by the All Indiana Podcast Network. Until next time, this has been the Northwood Podcast. I am Heath Jones. Peace.